Hey guys, Dion Taylor here. In this video, I will be discussing one of the new features for Dynamics 365 Field Service that is part of 2023 Release Wave 1. I'll be discussing the new not to exceed values, and I'll be right back after this. I am really excited about the new not to exceed functionality that is coming to Dynamics 365 Field Service. Now, for folks that are unfamiliar with this concept, let me explain how this works, right? So not to exceed limits are often used in the field service industry to ensure that service technicians don't exceed a certain budget, right, when they're performing work. So it involves setting a limit for a visit and then ensuring that technicians don't exceed that limit. So this limit could be related to price or cost or even both. So for example, if a company for example, right, you can see here, Jim is at the company, he's a customer, and Jen works at the field service organization. Jim says, hey, I want to make sure that certain types of work orders or work that's performed at this location or, right, any of those types of things, if that happens, I want to make sure that those work orders do not exceed a certain amount. And then Jen says, okay, we're going to make sure that we're gonna stick to that agreement, right, that we have with you. So that's really what we're gonna try and track in Dynamics 365 Field Service. So how does that work? Well, we're gonna be able to create NTE or not to exceed records in Dynamics 365 Field Service, and that's a different table. So what type of NTEs can we set up, because that's important, right? Well, I kind of talked about this a little bit already, right? We can set a price scenario, right? So this is really the price limit of what the customer will be charged, but we can also use cost for this, right? Your organization could have internal rules, right, for certain types of work where they might not want to exceed a certain cost amount, right? So that's why we also have the ability to set up the NTE cost type. And then lastly, maybe you want to have limits on both, right? So we can use both price and cost not to exceed limits, and these are called price cost margins. The way that this works is it's going to allow us to define a price limit, which is a static dollar amount, but then the cost limit could be a percentage of that price amount, right? A margin of that price amount. So for example, if your not to exceed price is $1,000 and your margin is 20%, then your cost NTE is going to be $800. So that's how that works. Now, let's talk about how those NTEs are prioritized. It's very important to understand that price and cost margin NTEs are always applied before price NTEs or cost NTEs. So what that means is that if there is a price and cost margin NTE that's applicable to a work order, if we also have price NTEs or cost NTEs, they will never be considered. So let me give you an example of that. So let's say I have a price NTE where only the incident type of fan out, as you can see, is filled out, right? And then we have another NTE, which is for the same incident type fan out, and that is a price and cost margin NTE. So the way that this works is if you have it set up like this, where you're only, for example, saying the incident type is going to be fan out, right? Only because we're really, by adding or data in the fields that you see on here, account, functional location, priority, work order type, we're really narrowing the scope, right? What we're saying here is any incident types, we don't care for which account, for which functional location, what the priority is, what the work order type is. anytime that incident type, there's a work order created with that incident type, we're going to apply an NTE. Now, because both the price and cost margin and the price NTE are both for the same incident type, remember what I said earlier, right? That price one will never be associated. If I would have a cost NTE, would also never be associated. Why? Because the price and cost margin NTE will always go first, right? That is part one of the logic that will apply those NTEs to work orders. There is more. Now, I'm sure that you noticed that there is an account lookup, right, on that NTEs. That's what you see over here. So this account column has the highest priority, and the rest of the columns have equal priority, but this is important to understand. So this means that if a work order is created and that service account has an NTE, then that will actually be applied. Now, if there is no NTE for that service account, then the system is going to check if the billing account has an NTE. And if it does, then the billing account NTE will be applied to the work order. So hopefully that makes sense, but now let's take a look inside of Dynamics 365 Field Service, and I will show you exactly how that works. But before I show you how that works, obviously you would first need to turn this on. So you see here, I'm in the settings area in the field service, and then I went to field service settings. You would need to turn on not to exceed, and depending on what you want to use, if you want to use both price not to exceed, cost not to exceed, or both, you need to turn these on, obviously, as well. Then you would need to refresh your screen, right? And then you can see here we have the ability to add these not to exceed records inside of Dynamics 365. So let me just open one up here. So you can see this is that price NTE, right? I have cost and I have price and cost margin as well. This is what I was talking about earlier. So this one only has emergency selected under priority. So that means that any work order that has an emergency priority cannot be more, cannot cost more than $2,500. You probably want to really, add some fields here, right? Maybe only emergency types that are, I don't know, service calls, and then maybe you also want to tie that to an incident type here as well. So again, the more fields you're going to add here, you're going to fill out here, the more you're kind of narrowing that scope, which means, the less work orders it will be applied to, because the system is going to apply those work orders automatically, right? Once you set these guys up. So let's go ahead and create a new work order. Let's look for a service account. We're just going to say ADATUM Corporation. We're going to do the alarm system installation, and then we're going to do that emergency priority, right, that we just saw on that not to exceed record. I'm going to go ahead and save and close. So here is the work order, and here is my price not to exceed NTE. Now, first, let me show you what the system actually did. You can see here, here's my work order not to exceed. This is like a manual many-to-many between the work order and the not to exceed record. And let me actually open that up. So you can see here that this is the not to exceed that got assigned to this work order. And if I open that up, this is the one we were talking about earlier, right? My emergency priority NTE with a price of $2,500. So that's kind of what happened. And it tied it to the work order. You can also see this is the applied amount and the source. How does it get selected? It just says not to exceed. That means that the system actually assigned it by themselves. And that's exactly the way that it works. I actually have here the ability to click a new work order not to exceed record, you're not supposed to do that. So I'm guessing they're gonna remove that functionality because again, the system automatically keeps track of this. Now, you saw that even though a price NTE is assigned to this work order, it also creates a line for cost, although it's blank and there's no data in there, but I just want you to notice that. Now, if I go back to my summary here, you also notice that, or maybe you didn't, but there's actually also here some percentages up top here as well. And I'll share in a second what that means. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that right here is my price not to exceed field and my cost not to exceed field. You see there's no data in the cost not to exceed because I only have that price NTE associated, right? Now, this is a little confusing. I'm hoping that they're going to change this, but what this means is it's saying the estimate, the data in the estimate field, which is, by the way, this field, because this is going to be the total amount, including the sales tax, if you use sales tax, I believe. So it's saying that this estimate is 100%, which is not totally clear, but it's rounding it up, that's why, of the price not to exceed, right? So it's kind of showing this in yellow. This is fine. So anytime this is 100% or less, you're good. Same thing with the cost. Now, if I'm over, right, let's say, because I can also manually change this, let's say that I'm going to say this is actually 1240, right, which is the half of that. Now it says the estimate, this amount, is 200 of the not to exceed limit. That's correct. This equals 200% of 1240, right? You also see that over here. So anything above 100, we're in trouble. We're exceeding that limit, right? So keep that in mind. That's kind of how that works. You are allowed to override this and then just save that. So if there's something that needs to be changed manually, you can. Now, since I've done that, let's go back here to my work order not to exceed records and look at that. This now shows that amount that I entered manually, and the not to exceed source is now user specified. How interesting is that? So you're allowed to do that. But again, you're supposed to do that here from this work order page. If I want to reset this, if I want to reset this to the old value, I can just click on this little button over here, right? And I am back to my $2,500 not to exceed. Now, of course, these NTE values are also going to be visible on the mobile app, right? So let me just go here to the schedule board and show you what that looks like. All right, so let me just go ahead and schedule my work order here that I just created. I'm just gonna set this to later on. Let's just do 7 o'clock. And let's take a look here in field service. Here is my booking. And we're going to go here to service. All right, and let's scroll down a little bit. And here you can see the price not to exceed. Now, the other thing that I noticed when I was looking at the form is that there is a PCF control on those fields. So in case that you're gonna take them off and then later on want to put them back on or anything like that, right? Just keep that in mind as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss another video again. Thanks for watching. Until next time.